Wicked, wicked, wicked.
I just feel really calm at the fully lengthened.
Wicked, wicked, wicked.
The longest road is probably consistency over time.
Wicked, wicked.
I posted a thing on Instagram last night, one of those like ask me question thing. I just wanted people to kind of write in what their, like the exercises they wanted to see me correct or had issues with themselves, right? It wasn't so much like, oh, you're doing everything wrong, let me fix everything. It's just like some people, as I saw when people wrote in, they're having problems with like the most basic things, right? So there was a lot of requests I got, and I'll try and get around to them as I go through videos and things like that. But the one that stuck out to me was hamstring curls, and people, like a lot of people looking for rear RDL advice, stiff leg deadlifts, good mornings, things like that that target hamstring, and like overwhelmingly it was like hamstring curl. So I guess people are having a hard time connecting with lying hamstring curl, and I understand that because I loved lying hamstring curl. I actually never did seated hamstring curl like my whole time I did bodybuilding, very rarely. I would literally only do it if a gym didn't have a laying hamstring curl I liked, right? So I'm a big fan of that. So I'm just gonna kind of tell you guys what works for me and try and like everything, I'm trying to connect things for people. So it's like, if you start thinking about, like I've said in videos that I've done in the past, if you start thinking about your hamstring as the bicep of your leg. So it's like, I wanna move the same way I move with my bicep, is the same way I wanna curl with my hamstring, mechanically in my mind, right? So we'll just kind of show the parallels to that, real simple off the bat. So it's like, so if we're gonna set up on a bicep curl, like we said before, I'm putting my weight down into this pad, right? So my weight being down into this pad here, I'll explain what that is over on the laying hamstring, but we're putting our weight down into this. So on a hamstring curl, if this is our feet, and these are our hands obviously, and this is our hamstring, this is our bicep, right? We're sitting on it. So this is my hip pressing down. The weight of my hip is on this pad, like I'm laying on this pad. I'm not perched on it. I'm literally have my weight down on it and I'm pushing down on my chest, right? So I can dig the tip of the very bottom of my tricep into there, and this would be my knee, right? So I'm flexing at the knee to flex my hamstring. So the same thing, I'm gonna catch here, and you'll see me do it over there as well. So I'll catch on my hamstring and be in midair, tensed on my hamstring, but on my bicep in this case, right? So when I go to curl, what happens is I drive my weight down and I curl up through. So I'm scooping up the weight and I'm pushing down my weight into the bench and flexing through. So if this is my foot up here at the top of my hamstring curl, it's going down, reaching out with my hamstring, and I'm breaking my knee, or my elbow in this case, and scooping my foot or hand up. If you think about the same parallels, right? So if we do that over here, it's the same setup, right? So if we think about it that inverted, or just in different areas of the body basically, if this is my quad is now my tricep that is now going to push down on here. My knee is now my elbow, which is my hinge point. My heel is now my hand scooping, right? And my torso and my hips are my shoulders that'll be pressing into this bench, right? So those would be my points of contact. So here, if I'm like I was over there, I have my weight down into the bench. I have my hands on the handle. I'm gonna catch here and just hold this weight. So my hips are pressed down, my weight's here. My weight's out in front of me, but I have control of it because my weight is balanced in this bench, right? So a lot of people will stay here and they'll curl here. What I like to do is I like to rise up enough to engage my back. So I want to lock into my lower lat, and I want to be chest up, and I almost have like these turtle arms where I'm grabbing here to keep myself postured. So when I go to move, it's my knee breaking and me falling through, and then letting it pull me up again, fall through. So I'm keeping contact with the bench, and all I'm doing is pumping my arms up and down, keeping this chest up. So I'm putting this engaged back and chest down by driving my hips into the bench, scooping my foot. So I can hold contraction here as long as I want. And then I let out. When you let out, think you're letting out from your foot. So I'm not letting up here, just getting pulled up. I'm literally holding here and contracting and letting that contraction and that foot drop slowly and pull me up. So it's forcing my hips to stay down. So I can't get this happening where I start rocking and rocking up. My pad should never move on my heel. So from the point it's on my leg right here, it should never rotate. It should just roll and I grab. There'll be like an inch of movement, but we're not trying to do this, where the whole pad is kicking up and it's just floating in midair. We're trying to stay on the hamstring and rocking. Like I said, this is our hip is our pressure point here. My body is my pressure point on the curl. And just envision in your mind, you're literally doing a seated bicep curl, but you're laying down, right? Try to envision that in your mind. That's always helped me, because a lot of people, like, they pull things, because a lot of mistakes people make here, which I'll point out, is like people want to like get here, and they think because these handles are here, yes, is this right? Don't get me wrong, you can do it this way. There's nothing wrong with this way. It's just that a lot of the times it's hard for people to lock down in their back, or to like feel stable in their lower back. And you'll notice if things get heavy, like we're getting to like the bottom of the stack here, some guys, and you start wrenching through, that massive weight pulling those feet down, a lot of the times will make people twinge their back, their lower back, right? Or they'll get a little pull on their hamstring, because this momentum of this force going backwards and me staying here, I have nothing to brace that impact. So I'm literally, my hamstring is on its own, and it's just like, and grab it back. Whereas here I want to squeeze, and I want my body, my control of that contraction and my letting out to lift me to create more cushion for me to be able to move through the movement, right? I don't want to come to this. It's the same thing as if you were to start and stop a bicep curl. Like I wouldn't squeeze up as hard as I can and go. That's what you're doing. If you're trying to hold all your weight back here, you see these guys, because they'll sit on the bench like this. So a lot of guys will see, they'll set up their bicep curl like this. And my hip, I'm practically humping this pole. So I'm getting as tight to this as I can, so they understand that they need this as support. So they need to get as tight as they can to it. And then they create this like hunching almost and rocking on their bicep. So they're hinging from shoulder, neck, lat, trap, whatever the fuck it is. And they are driving off this pad, but they're not doing it with their butt back. So we're trying to create this angle. I almost want to feel like I'm curling, I'm pulling from the ground forward in front of me up to my face. I'm not arcing. Just because the machine does this arcing motion and comes around doesn't mean that's what I need to do. That's why this bar moves, right? So this is your arm, this is rotating to where you can curl. That's why they made it two independent pieces. That's why every bicep machine is two independent pieces, right? It's an arm and then this adjusting arm that swings. So don't get caught up in the weight, because if I can get 40 pounds on my bicep here, so I'm already locked on bicep, I'm not flexing it. It's like when I go to grab something and just hold it in midair, I'm just tense, right? So I'm putting tension into the handle. I have my weight down, which is my hips now, and my butt is now my head on a hamstring curl. So I'm creating that engagement, so I'm locked in my back. My weight's back on my hips and my chest and arms here, if it's a hamstring curl, and I'm rocking. So the smoothness of the curl is me driving weight down when I curl, so I'm pushing my weight into the bench, and I'm breaking that elbow with a flat wrist up. And do not do this. Don't do that shit. Whatever you do on the curl, don't end up with wrists like this, where it's like my wrist is curled. Because all that is here. So a lot of guys, there's different ways to do it. You don't have to do it my way. I like to keep tension on this knuckle, these two knuckles. The rest of my hand is just a guide. So I'm supinating. So you'll see guys, oh, they turn your wrist through when you curl, because you want to peek up through that bicep. Well, okay, cool. Or I could just start like that. I'm just gonna put the weight, because if there's pressure on my hand here, I can't rotate my hand in. If all the weight's here, how do I come out of that supination? I can't, it's impossible. So I'm wide open, curling on an open bicep, right? And start thinking about when you guys and girls curl, it's like when I let down, so we'll do it with one arm. When I let down from here, I'm thinking about this weight's on my hand, so it's on this knuckle here, on my palm. It's not on the meat of my palm. You can do meat of palm, you're gonna get a lot up higher, so we can change angles, hit different areas that we feel I'm able to squeeze up deeper into the rep, whereas out here, I'm gonna get stuck if I'm really on that knuckle, right? So we wanna always think that when you let out from things, that you're seeing your bicep go down into your elbow. So I have the weight forward so that I can brace for that cushion. And then I'm pushing down and I'm sliding bicep back up. Right? So if you guys start thinking things in terms of like, maybe not how they anatomically move, you're not going to feel these interwound fibers going, moving and contorting, right? But in your head, it's going to feel like I'm like letting my bicep slide down to its insertion, and then I'm rolling it back up to its origin, right? So I'm trying to squeeze. I'm trying to imagine that bicep moving forward and moving back. Same way you thought, like in your mind, where you're doing chest, it's this elevator door feeling of opening and closing. So we get the feeling of the sternum spreading apart, the pectoral spreading off of here and then squeezing back in, right? Next, we're down to the stringer tank top. Another thing to envision when you're doing hamstrings, because a lot of people wrote in about laying hamstring curl, but there's a lot of gyms now have really great one-legged, like standing hamstring curl, or like the seated. We're gonna go do the seated hammer strength one. It's a pin loaded or plate loaded, doesn't matter. But just that same feeling, I tell people when they're doing that kind of one-legged curl where like their posture is very upright and they're swinging up, you almost have to have the mentality of like a concentration curl on a bicep curl, right? So if we think about that and we connect the two, it's like if I'm wide open here, a lot of guys will do curls here because it's hard for them to supinate so wide open. But like you can do it off this edge too, but I prefer a flatter line. So it's like, it's the same thing here that we're gonna be doing over there. My shoulder is now my hip if I'm standing doing a hamstring curl. My hand is now my foot. My elbow is now my knee. So I have to lean back on here, or at least get pressure into here to be able to move that elbow right away. If I just try and swing up, it's not a curl, right? It's just, what am I doing? So I'm literally trying to do this against the bench. I'm trying to snap that elbow up and scoop. But since the elbow's got pressure on it, it's just straight up. But my force is going back into here so I can scoop under and squeeze, right? So think about it the same way. My body's a little forward right now. The way my hip would be in line if I was standing, this is my leg. I'm gonna rock into the thing and I'm gonna break and I'm gonna roll up. So my wrist is now my heel rolling up through and squeezing my hamstring, right? The way I'm rocking on bicep right now. So this little bit of movement, this little bit of rocking keeps pressure on here, creates no air, so we're always pressured against here and we're able to move and flex on bicep, or in the case we're gonna do next, hamstring, right? And it can be done with this angled one, like just that feeling of your arm being extended and there's a support behind it and you're rolling up through it, right? This is like we're correlating or connecting these two things of the hanging bicep curl or concentrated curl with the one-legged curl, right? So a lot of people come in this and they'll dig their knee into this pad and they'll create this tension. So they create almost space in here and they're rocking like this just to kick their foot up, right? But the idea is you want to create length in your upper body, and I want to put my entire leg against here. So again, imagine my quad is my tricep, my knee is my elbow, and my foot is my hand. My hamstring is my bicep. So I want to stay up as long as I can. I don't want to be tiny here and doing little curls. I want to create length in my leg, and I want to be long so that when I go to move, I'm literally kneeing and scooping. So there's not a lot of movement on the pad on my leg. It's just I'm pushing forward and flexing up. So rock up, rock forward. So this movement allows me to keep it on my hamstring the whole time. If there's nothing against my leg, if there's no pad against my leg, in air, it would literally look like this. I'm literally moving my leg forward and scooping. I'm trying to flex up into my hamstring, right? So since there's something there, force is generated into the pad and I'm up through, flexing on your hamstring, right? That's about it. The laying hamstring through, I think, will help people. Just don't think that you're like bobbing up and down, like it's like, let the tension of that's on your heels, that you're controlling on your hamstring, let that tension pull you up slowly. So you're in essence releasing your bicep slowly, and I'm almost pressing myself up, and then I'm pulling myself back down with that curl, right? So I'm creating the length, I'm lengthening that hamstring and then shortening it. And I understand like the elasticity of the muscle in the sense that like I'm letting it go and I'm bringing it back in the same tension that I let it out. So I don't want to go slow and then curl, like snap, let go of my elastic. I want to reach out and I want to bring it back to its starting point, right? I want to keep elongating and shortening that muscle, but within a range I can control. That's the key to like doing biceps as well. So we're talking about how we're seated bicep curl or we're doing that concentration curl hanging. It's like, that's what I'm telling you. I want you to think that I want to feel my bicep sink down and roll open. You can even roll here and let it fully extend, get under again and roll. So understand how your bicep moves, understand how to control on the muscle you're working, right? Everything else is locked down around or able to move to allow that to happen. Because if I just stay stiff and I don't move on a concentration curl, it's just all me muscling it up and eventually it's just gonna die. I have to have some type of inertia to be able to squeeze up through the top of a range of something, right? So that was my rant for today.